Somewhere beneath the Ural Mountains, 3 Russian officers sit in a spherical concrete bunker, waiting. They are the guardians of humanity's most terrifying secret, the Dead Hand, a system that can launch Russia's entire nuclear arsenal without a single living commander. A Doomsday device that, once activated, monitors the Earth for signs of nuclear attack through seismic sensors, radiation detectors, and atmospheric pressure gauges. If it concludes that Russia has been struck and its leadership eliminated, it will automatically unleash apocalypse, firing command rockets that soar 30 miles above the Earth, broadcasting unstoppable launch codes to every surviving nuclear silo, submarine, and bomber in the Russian arsenal. The most terrifying part, it still exists. And as of August 2025, just weeks ago, it may still be on alert. The year is 1974. Deep within the corridors of Soviet military planning, a new project begins under absolute secrecy. The Americans have just deployed Pershing 2 missiles in Europe, weapons that can reach Moscow in less than 10 minutes. The Soviets face a terrifying possibility, a decapitation strike that could eliminate the entire Soviet leadership before they could even reach for the nuclear button. The solution they devise will haunt humanity for the next half-century. The program receives the code name Perimeter, GRA-U Index 15E601. To the handful of Soviet officials who know of its existence, it represents the ultimate insurance policy. To the rest of the world, when they eventually learn of it, it will become known by a more chilling name, Dead Hand. For 11 years, Soviet engineers labor in secret. They must create a system that can think, decide, and act when every human decision maker is gone. A system that can distinguish between equipment malfunction and genuine attack. A system that can end civilization. November 1984. The Belarusian SSR. A command rocket launches into the night sky. It carries no warhead, only a radio transmitter. As it arcs across the Soviet Union, it broadcasts a simple signal. Thousands of kilometers away, near Baikonur in Kazakhstan, a silo receives the transmission. The massive doors roll open. An R-36M intercontinental ballistic missile, what NATO calls the SS-18 Satan, roars to life. The test is a success. Perimeter has proven it can reach across an entire continent and command nuclear forces to strike. In 1985, Perimeter goes online. September 26, 1983, 2 years before Perimeter's activation, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov sits before a wall of monitors at Serpukhov 15, a bunker south of Moscow. He commands the Soviet Union's early warning system. At 0015, alarms shriek through the bunker. The screens flash a single terrifying word: launch. The satellites report 1 American ICBM inbound, then 2, then 5. Petrov has minutes to decide humanity's fate. Soviet military doctrine is clear: launch on warning, strike back before the missiles hit. But something bothers Petrov. Why only 5 missiles? If America were starting World War III, wouldn't they launch everything? The new Oko satellite system has been glitchy, mistaking sunlight reflected off clouds for missile exhaust. Ground radar shows nothing. Petrov makes a decision that will never appear in any official report. He declares it a false alarm. For 23 agonizing minutes, Petrov waits. No mushroom clouds bloom over Soviet cities. No missiles fall. He was right. The world never ends that night because one man chose to think rather than follow procedure. But Soviet leadership draws a different lesson from the incident. Human judgment saved the world, yes. But what if next time there are no humans left to judge? The development of Perimeter accelerates. Valery Yarynich knows secrets that could get him killed. As a colonel in the Soviet strategic rocket forces, he helped build Perimeter. He walked through those spherical concrete bunkers buried deep underground, where duty officers would one day hold humanity's fate. He wrote the algorithms that would decide whether civilization continues. Years later, in a Washington restaurant called the Iron Gate, the 72-year-old Yarynich glances nervously over his shoulder. He knows he's being watched. Former KGB never truly retires, but he has decided the world needs to know what he helped create. Yarynich describes the logic of Perimeter with the detached precision of an engineer. The system lies dormant mostly. A high-ranking official must first activate it during a crisis. Only then does it begin its vigil, monitoring its network of sensors across the Soviet Union. The system follows a rigid protocol. First, has perimeter been activated by leadership? Second, do sensors detect nuclear explosions on Soviet soil, the characteristic flash of light, the electromagnetic pulse, the seismic shock, the radiation? Third, have communications with the general staff been severed? If all three conditions are met, perimeter infers that decapitation has occurred. It transfers launch authority to those three duty officers in their underground sphere. But here's where human element creeps back in, maybe. The officers must still turn their keys. They must still make the final decision, unless they don't. Unless the system has been modified since Yarynich worked on it. Unless it has become fully automatic. Yarynich calls it insane to keep such a system secret. A doomsday device only deters if your enemy knows it exists. Otherwise, it's just a very expensive way to guarantee vengeance from beyond the grave. Imagine the sequence. A crisis escalates. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe it's deliberate. The Russian president or whoever holds the nuclear codes activate as perimeter. The system awakens deep beneath the Urals, in bunkers designed to withstand direct nuclear strikes. The duty officers receive confirmation. Perimeter is live. From this moment, they know they might be the last humans to decide humanity's fate. The sensors begin their work. Seismic detectors that can distinguish between earthquakes and nuclear detonations. Radiation monitors spread across 11 time zones. Atmospheric pressure sensors that can detect the distinctive overpressure wave of nuclear explosions. Light sensors calibrated to recognize the unique double flash of a nuclear detonation, a brief pulse, a momentary dimming, then a second, longer pulse of incredible brightness. If the attack comes, perimeter registers each impact. Moscow, gone. St. Petersburg, vaporized. The military command centers, eliminated. The system attempts to contact the general staff. No response. It tries alternate channels. Silence. The clock is ticking. 15 minutes pass, maybe 30, maybe an hour. The exact timing remains classified. Perimeter concludes that legitimate command authority no longer exists. In the bunker, lights change color. New displays activate. The three officers, assuming they survived, now have the authority to end the world. Or perhaps they don't even need to act. Perhaps the system proceeds automatically. Command rockets launch from protected silos. These are not ordinary ICBMs. They carry no nuclear warheads, only powerful radio transmitters. As they arc over the radioactive ruins of Russia, they broadcast an authenticated launch order, a signal that cannot be countermanded, cannot be recalled, cannot be stopped. Every surviving nuclear weapon in the Russian arsenal receives the command. Silo doors grinding open in Siberia, mobile launchers emerging from hidden positions, submarines rising to launch depth, bombers already airborne turning toward their fail-safe points, now cleared to proceed to targets. The 15P011 command missile, derived from the MRUR-100U rocket, flies for 30 minutes, continuously transmitting. Its 15B99 radio warhead, designed by the LPI Design Bureau, cuts through the electromagnetic interference of nuclear explosions, through the static of electronic warfare, through the chaos of Armageddon. Within an hour of Russia's death, its vengeance is complete. The 1980s were humanity's closest brush with extinction. In 1983 alone, the world nearly ended twice. First with Petrov's false alarm in September, then in November with Able Archer 83, a NATO exercise so realistic that Soviet leadership believed it was cover for an actual first strike. Soviet nuclear forces went to full alert. Missiles were loaded. Bombers scrambled. The nuclear briefcase, the Shaget, was handed to Soviet leader Yuri Andropov. Only when U.S. Air Force intelligence officer Leonard Perutz chose not to respond to Soviet preparations, a fortuitous, if ill-informed decision, according to later analysis, did the crisis pass. This was the world that birthed Perimeter, a world where Ronald Reagan called the Soviet Union an evil empire and Soviet leadership believed he was crazy enough to launch a first strike, a world where computer glitches could be mistaken for incoming death, a world balanced on a knife's edge. In this environment of ultimate paranoia, Perimeter seemed logical, even necessary. The Soviet military had calculated the unthinkable. With America's new Trident D5 submarine-launched ballistic missiles as accurate as any land-based ICBM, US submarines could creep close to Soviet shores and launch a strike with less than 3 minutes warning. Not enough time to assess. Not enough time to respond. Not enough time for humans to think. The only answer was to remove humans from the equation, or at least to create a system that could act when humans could not. For years, Perimeter remains perhaps the most closely guarded secret in the Soviet Union. Even many high-ranking officials don't know it exists. Those who do understand its purpose. It's not just a weapon, but a psychological tool. It allows Soviet leadership to wait, to verify, to think, knowing that even if they wait too long, retaliation is assured. But secrets have a way of escaping. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. In the chaos, a retired military officer mentions something to a Western journalist, hints, fragments, enough to piece together a nightmare. In 1993, Bruce Blair of the Brookings Institution publishes an op-ed in the New York Times. The West learns that the Soviets built a doomsday machine. Not in fiction, in fact. The Russian government neither confirms nor denies, but slowly, through interviews with defectors, through careful analysis of Soviet military doctrine, through the courage of men like Yarynich, who risk their lives to warn the world, the picture becomes clearer. David Hoffman's book, The Dead Hand, brings the story to a wider audience. Magazine articles follow, each revelation more chilling than the last. December 2011, Colonel General Sergei Karakayev, commander of the Russian Strategic Missile Forces, gives an interview to Komsomolskaya Pravda. Almost casually, he confirms what the world has suspected but never known for certain. Perimeter exists. It is operational. It is ready. Colonel General Viktor Yesin, former chief of Russia's main staff of the Strategic Missile Forces, warns that Perimeter might become ineffective if the United States withdraws from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The implication is clear. Perimeter is not a relic. It is being maintained, updated, improved. Reports surface of upgrades. New hypersonic missiles that could serve as command rockets, flying at 5 to 7 kilometers per second, too fast for any defense system to intercept. Integration with Russia's newest Sarmat ICBMs, weapons that can carry enough warheads to destroy an entire country. Some researchers claim the system now uses neural networks, artificial intelligence that can better distinguish between false alarms and genuine attacks. Russia neither confirms nor denies. August 1st, 2025. Just weeks ago, US President Donald Trump announces he has repositioned 2 nuclear submarines. He's responding to a statement by former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, a statement that referenced Dead Hand. The machine that couldn't be turned off is still there, still waiting. What does it mean to live in a world where machines can end civilization? The defenders of Perimeter argue it actually makes nuclear war less likely. It removes the pressure for launch on warning. Leadership can wait, verify, be certain, knowing that retaliation is guaranteed regardless. It eliminates the possibility of a successful decapitation strike, thereby removing the incentive to attempt one. But consider the counter-argument. What if there's a malfunction? Not just a false alarm like Petrov faced, but a systemic failure? What if an earthquake damages sensors? What if a massive solar flare triggers electromagnetic readings similar to nuclear detonations? What if communication systems fail for mundane reasons? Equipment failure, human error, a computer virus. Yarynich himself, one of Perimeter's creators, expressed doubts. He told David Hoffman about those 3 duty officers in their bunker facing the ultimate decision. Would they, having potentially felt the shock waves of nuclear explosions, knowing their families were likely dead, seeing confirmation that their nation was dying, would they choose revenge? Or would they, as Yarynich hoped, think, what's the point in doing it if half the globe is already wiped out? The answer has never been tested. We must hope it never is. Consider too the precedent. If Russia has dead hand, what about other nations? The United States developed similar concepts. The emergency rocket communication system, the Strategic Defense Initiative. How many other doomsday devices exist in classified bunkers around the world? In 2019, military analysts argued that America needs its own dead hand to counter new threats from hypersonic missiles that could strike with almost no warning. The compression of decision time, they argue, makes human judgment increasingly impossible. The logical endpoint is full automation. Nuclear weapons exist to never be used. Nuclear command systems exist to never be activated. Perimeter exists to never make its final decision. This is the paradox of deterrence. We build machines of ultimate destruction to prevent ultimate destruction. We prepare for wars we must never fight. We plan for scenarios that must never occur. But what happens when the safeguards become dangers themselves? When the cure becomes potentially worse than the disease? When we build machines so complex that we can't fully predict their behavior in all circumstances? The scientists who built the first atomic bombs worried they might ignite the atmosphere. They did the calculations, concluded it was impossible, and proceeded. They were right about that specific concern, but they could not calculate the world they were creating, where humanity would live forever, under the shadow of instant annihilation, where machines would be given authority to end civilization. Perimeter represents the logical endpoint of the nuclear age. We have automated everything else. Why not apocalypse? Throughout the Cold War and beyond, humanity has survived nuclear annihilation through an uncomfortable mixture of planning, luck, and individual human judgment. Stanislav Petrov chose to think rather than follow procedure. Valery Yarynich chose to reveal rather than remain silent. Leonard Perutz chose not to escalate during Able Archer 83. Each decision tipped the scales towards survival, but perimeter removes these human circuit breakers, or at least it reduces them to 3 individuals in a bunker making a decision under impossible circumstances with incomplete information in the aftermath of nuclear attack. Is this wisdom or madness? Security or supreme danger? The answer may depend on whether you believe human judgment under extreme stress is more or less reliable than carefully programmed machines. One thing is certain: the existence of perimeter changes the nuclear calculus. Any nation contemplating a first strike must know that destroying Russia's leadership, its command centers, its communication systems accomplishes nothing. The retaliation will come anyway. The dead will have their revenge. Valery Yarynich died in 2012, but his warning lives on. In his book, C3 Nuclear Command, Control, Cooperation, he argued that the greatest danger is not the weapons themselves, but the systems that control them. The secrecy surrounding these systems, he believed, makes the world more dangerous, not safer. He dreamed of a world where nuclear powers would share information about their command and control systems, where transparency would replace paranoia, where understanding would reduce the risk of misunderstanding leading to annihilation. Instead, we have moved in the opposite direction. More countries have nuclear weapons. Delivery systems have become faster, stealthier, harder to detect. Decision times have compressed from hours to minutes, and somewhere in bunkers we'll never see, new versions of perimeter are being built, programmed, activated. The Doomsday machine that couldn't be turned off is not a relic of the Cold War. It is a present danger, a future threat, a permanent shadow over humanity's existence. Right now, as you listen to these words, perimeter exists. Perhaps it sits dormant, waiting for activation. Perhaps it is on alert, its sensors scanning for signs of attack. Perhaps those 3 officers are in their bunker at this very moment, running through their procedures, checking their equipment, knowing that they might be the last humans to make a conscious decision about humanity's future. We have created machines that can end the world, and we have given them the authority to do so. We have built our security on the promise of mutual annihilation, and then automated that annihilation to remove human hesitation, human mercy, human doubt. This is the world we have made. This is the world we inhabit. This is the world our children will inherit. The question is not whether such systems should exist. They already do. The question is not whether they make us safer. That debate will continue as long as nuclear weapons exist. The question is whether humanity can survive its own ingenuity, whether we can live forever on the precipice without eventually falling, whether we can trust machines with decisions that no human should have to make and no machine should be able to make. Somewhere beneath the Ural Mountains, dead hand waits. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. It simply waits for the day we hope never comes, the day the world ends, and the machines we build to protect us become the instruments of our final destruction, the Doomsday machine that couldn't be turned off, because once it's turned on, there may be no one left to turn it off, and that, perhaps, is the most terrifying truth of all.